Greetings, students of higher learning. I am your Easter Bunny professor who is going to give you a great lecture on 1 Thessalonians. And I will not, unlike Dr. Hume, I will not ever say, in the middle of my sentences.
Tomas, what are you doing? Tomas, Tomas, what a problematic bunny. Anyway, happy Easter, folks. I hope you've had a wonderful time with your family and you're ready to jump back into the New Testament and do some work with 1 Thessalonians as we reflect on the meaning of the resurrection in our lives. Now, for 1 Thessalonians, what I would like you to do actually is a little assignment. Let me give you a brief overview, outline of the letter first. I break the letter up into the following parts. The first verse is the prescript and greeting in along lines with the formal sort of Greco-Roman format of writing a letter. And then, unlike the Greco-Roman format where the Thanksgiving can be fairly brief, Paul's Thanksgiving is very long. It starts in the second verse and goes, I think, all the way to chapter 2, verse 16, where he's giving thanks and praying for the Thessalonians. And then the body of the letter starts in 2:17 and ends in 5:22, and I've broken that into two parts. First, Paul recaps a little bit of his plans and some reports that he's heard, and then in 4:1 he launches into some exhortations for the Thessalonians, and then concludes with farewell blessings and greetings. Now, let's keep this in mind. For Thessalonians, it's probably the earliest New Testament writing. It's certainly, most scholars believe, the earliest of Paul's writings, and perhaps then the earliest New Testament writing. But for the rest of the information about 1 Thessalonians, instead of me lecturing you about it, I want you to sort of engage the text yourself and get some information about this. Now, later in the week, I'll be posting the answers for this, but we want you, Dr. Dawson and I, would like you to go through this portion, read the first chapter, verse 2, all the way through the second chapter, verses 16, and answer the following questions as you read the text closely. How would you describe Paul's tone? What can we learn about the Thessalonians? How would you describe Paul's relationship to the Thessalonians? And what can we learn about the Thessalonians' relationship to others? Both in their region, Macedonia, but also perhaps back in the church in Jerusalem. So describe a little bit of that, jot that down, just get it while you're reading, have a piece of paper or however you jot notes on your iPad or whatever, and jot that down and be ready to post some of those reflections online. So that's the first part of the assignment. The second part of the assignment, I'd like you to choose any one of the portions of the body of the letter, so starting in 2:17 through 5:11. Choose one of those, anyone, randomly choose it. Now, you have to read the whole letter, so I want you to read the entire section so you know the context for whatever section you choose. But choose one of these sections, one of these parts of the letter, and as you read it, answer the following questions. Is Paul describing a past situation? Is he perhaps describing a report he's heard? Or is he offering an exhortation based upon something that he may have heard as people came back and reported to him about what's going on in the congregation? So, as you're doing that, describe your passage and write a brief response to the questions. So, you can upload this or you can just cut and paste. So, the questions from the Thanksgiving section and then from whatever section you choose, these questions, right, and write up a brief paragraph. Now, if you want to be creative, and this might be fun for some of you, write a brief letter back, right? So if Paul's describing a past situation, maybe you write the letter involving that past situation. Maybe you write a letter that came to Paul earlier, right? Or another response, or maybe you write the report that he's come. What is he responding to? How would you frame the report? Or if Paul wrote the exhortation, well, what's the Thessalonians' response? Say they heard this from Paul, and what would their response be? Or what would be the letter that precipitated Paul's exhortation? So imagine, if you will, a back and forth of letters, and just be creative. It could be another letter that Paul wrote. It could be a letter that the Thessalonians wrote to Paul. If you want to do that, and you want to include that, then maybe just write that letter as just a brief paragraph, just a brief note after the passage that you describe, that you work with. Try that. We'll see how creative that might be. That might be kind of a fun thing that you guys can engage with one another in discussion on. Or maybe you choose to do this as your response. Maybe you read someone else's section and you decide, well, I'm going to write a little response. This is the letter that might have precipitated the section that you're describing, or this is a letter of response to the exhortation that you're describing. Be creative this week. Be creative. See what you can stir up here in this week of the resurrection. All right, many blessings to you.